Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Meridian Planning and Zoning meeting for the date of January 2nd, and let's start with roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Holland?
Here.
Commissioner Seal?
Here.
Commissioner McCarville?
Here.
Commissioner Olson? Here. Commissioner Casanelli?
Here.
Commissioner Fitzgerald?
Here. Thank you, ma'am. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. We don't have any changes to the agenda, so can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, same. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we have 3 items on the consent agenda. The approval of minutes for December 19th, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the finding and facts, conclusions of law for Magical Minds Daycare, H 2019-0119, and the findings of fact and conclusions of law for Off the Field, H 2019-0112. Would anyone like any of those removed from the consent agenda? If not, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
It's like, that was quick. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to explain the public hearing process that we go through this evening. We will open each item individually and then start with the staff report. The staff will report their findings regarding how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and uniform development code with the staff's recommendations. After the staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case for the approval of their application and respond to any staff comments. The applicant will have 15 minutes to do so, and then after the applicant has finished we'll open the floor to public testimony. Hopefully, as we talked about, there's an iPad in the back. If you haven't signed up, please do so if you'd like to testify for an application this evening. We have 2 applications that kind of surround large areas. Are there anyone here representing an HOA this evening? No? Okay, so we'll skip over that. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to have an opportunity to respond to any public testimony or questions, and then close the discussion. At that time, we will close the public hearing, and the commissioners will have a chance to deliberate and hopefully make a recommendation to City Council on the application presented to us. So with that, let's open the public hearing for Sky Mesa Highlands, file number H 2019-0123, and we'll start with Sonia and the staff report.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the commission. The first application for you tonight is a request for annexation and zoning and a preliminary plat. This site consists of 30.6 acres of land. It's zoned RUT in Ada County and is located at the northwest corner of South Eagle Road and East Lake Hazel Road. Adjacent land use and zoning to the west are single-family residential homes zoned R4. To the north is single-family residential in the development process. Sky Mesa subdivision zoned R8 and another parcel zoned RUT in Ada County. To the east is Eagle Road and single-family residential properties zoned R4 and R15. And to the south is rural residential properties zoned RUT in Ada County. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation for this property is low density residential, which calls for 3 or fewer units per acre. The applicant is requesting annexation and zoning of 31.96 acres of land with an R4 zoning district for the development of 74 new single-family residential detached homes at a gross density of 2.45 units per acre, which is consistent with the low density residential future land use map designation. There is an existing home and accessory structure on this site. The home is proposed to remain on a lot in the proposed subdivision. And that is, if you can see my pointer here, it's this lot right here. The preliminary plat is proposed as shown, consisting of 75 building lots, 11 common lots, and 2 other lots on 30.6 acres of land. Originally, the plat was planned to develop in 1 phase, but is now proposed to develop in 2 phases, as shown on the plan there on the right. The average lot size in the development is 11,000 square feet, with a minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet. Access is proposed via the extension of stub streets to the north in Sky Mesa subdivision via East Taconic Drive from Eagle Road. Emergency access only is proposed via Eagle Road, and that's in the location noted here. The existing home is seeking a waiver to UDC 11-3A-383 from City Council for their access driveway via Eagle Road to remain until such time as the property redevelops. At such time, access would be taken internally from within the subdivision and the access would be closed. The UDC does require new uses to take access from internally within the subdivision, so that's the reason for the request for the waiver. Detached sidewalks are proposed along all internal streets and along Eagle and Lake Hazel roads. Staff recommends the sidewalk is extended across the frontage of the lot adjacent to Eagle Road, where the existing home is proposed to remain. A 25-foot wide landscape street buffer is required along Eagle and Lake Hazel roads. Staff is recommending the buffer is extended across the frontage of the lot adjacent to Eagle in a common lot where the existing home is proposed to remain, except for the area where the driveway is located if council approves the waiver for their driveway to remain. A minimum of 10% qualified open space and site amenities, and one site amenity is required to be provided within this development. A total of 6.55 acres, or 21% of qualified open space, consisting of half the street buffer along Eagle and Lake Hazel roads, 8-foot wide parkways along internal streets, and common areas over 50 feet by 100 feet in area are proposed in excess of UDC standards. A large part of the common area includes 2 areas with significant slopes that are proposed to be landscaped in accord with UDC standards to count toward the qualified open space standards. And that is these light green areas here and here along the southern boundary. A 675-foot long pedestrian pathway is depicted on the landscape plan through the common area on Lot 14, Block 3, and that is this area right here. Because it does not connect to an existing or planned pedestrian or bicycle route outside the development as designated on the pathway's master plan, it does not count as a qualified site amenity. Therefore, the applicant is now proposing to not provide a pathway in this area. Because no other qualified site amenities are proposed and because removal of the pathway will essentially make the common area unusable, staff is not in favor of removal of this pathway. The development is proposed to be included in the Sky Mesa Homeowners Association and is going to be granted access to all amenities in that development, consisting of 2 swimming pools and clubhouses, sports fields, consisting of a ball field, basketball court, walking paths, playground structure, and a swing set. The distance to these amenities range from 950 to 2,400 feet away from the northwest corner of this development. Because this will essentially be another phase of Sky Mesa and amenities were provided above the minimum standards for that development, staff is amenable to the applicant's request, provided that that pathway is still provided within that linear common open area. The Grimmett lateral runs along the west and north boundaries of this site within a 30-foot wide irrigation easement that is proposed to remain open on the west side and be piped along the north side. Along the west boundary, this easement lies approximately 17 feet off the property line, resulting in approximately a 47-foot wide encroachment and building setback for the affected lots. So you can see that area. You can see my pointer here, clear along this boundary here. Fencing is proposed along the east side of the easement line within building lots, resulting in a very large area that will be unusable for homeowners of these lots that they will have to pay taxes on, although it may provide an amenity of sorts with the wildlife. And this is just a side note. When the East Ridge Estate subdivision directly to the west was approved on the adjacent property, in 2017, council did approve a waiver for the easement to be located within adjacent building lots on that site. So just a side note, but the UDC 113A6E requires irrigation easements wider than 10 feet to be included in a common lot that is a minimum of 20 feet wide and outside of a fenced area unless modified by City Council at a public hearing. The applicant is requesting approval of a waiver to this requirement to allow the easement to be located within adjacent building lots. If council does not approve the waiver, the easement should be placed in common lots. The The UDC 11.3A.6b requires all laterals to be piped unless used as a water amenity or linear open space as defined in UDC 11.1A.1. The applicant is requesting council approval of a waiver to this requirement to leave the Grimmett lateral open. Council may grant a waiver if it finds the public purpose requiring such will not be served and public safety can be preserved. If council does not approve the requested waiver, the laterals should be piped. Conceptual building elevations were submitted as shown that demonstrate the architecture and building materials for single and two-story structures proposed within the development that include a mix of materials and colors with stone veneer wainscot. Because all of the proposed units are detached, they are not subject to design review. Written testimony has been received on this application from Rick Thurber. He is a property owner that abuts the southwest corner of the proposed development. He is requesting the proposed irrigation system, which will replace the current one, has at least 60 PSI to operate his sprinkler system instead of the 52 PSI proposed. And he also requests homes constructed on lots directly north of his property be restricted to a single story in height so as not to obstruct his views, and similarly trees that are planted be of a variety that won't grow tall to obstruct his views. Todd Tucker, the applicant, also provided a response to the staff report, and I'll just let the applicant cover that in his presentation. Staff is recommending approval with a requirement of a development agreement per the staff report. Staff will stand for any questions.
Thanks, Sonia. Any questions for staff?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Castelli.
Sonia, can you kind of clarify those lots on the west side and that the easement? I guess that's those, there you go, those lots. Can you cover that again, how that will affect those lots? You mentioned they're going to be unusable for the homeowners, but yet they're on their lots, so they'll be taxed on that. Can you just clear all that up for me, please? Or expound on it, I should say.
Well, as I stated, the code requires this area to be located in a common lot unless council waives it. The applicant is requesting a waiver, although the applicant did, I believe, say in their response that they were amenable to placing it in a common lot now, but I'm not sure how that leaves their buildable area for their lots, so I'd rather them speak to that. But yeah, it creates a 47-foot approximate encroachment within those building lots, just as I said. I'm not sure if there's any other clarification that I'm not addressing.
If it becomes a common lot, how does that impact the lot sizes?
It will exclude that area.
Correct, but will they be, will they still meet the minimum lot sizes?
They'll be required to. I haven't done the calculations. I assume they will, but I haven't done the calcs.
Okay.
If they don't, they'll have to make revisions to the lots to comply.
I think the history of this neighborhood is if they're fenced off, they become like tumbleweed trapments, and they aren't well taken care of. And so if they're not in a common lot, it allows the people to still take care of them so they don't fall into disrepair. Because I think some of these had that problem in the past, and they became giant tumbleweed traps. And they just sat there and vegetation grew, and it was a fire hazard. So I think that was why the council gave them a waiver in the past. But Sonia can probably clarify that further. But I think there's some that have them and some that are fenced off with a common lot behind them, and I don't think the common lot works that well.
Chairman, the applicant was also considering improving it as a water amenity and placing it in a common lot, which would be the ideal situation. Then it would be maintained better, but there are parameters in our code that have certain requirements for the water amenity, so far as slopes and depth and all that. So that is something the applicant can speak to a little further too.
So is there alternative compliance that can go in this?
It's just a council waiver.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Seal.
question following on to that. So if it's covered, then if that is covered, then essentially the fencing is not required or anything, it just becomes grass or a backyard. Is that correct, or is it still something that has to be fenced off and maintained?
If it's piped, if the easement holder will allow grass, that is a possibility, yes. However, there still is an easement, I believe, that will exist there, so I'm not sure what that will entail.
Commissioner Holland.
Mr. Chair. Sonia, the lot that's remaining on Eagle Road, how large is that parcel?
The applicant can probably speak to that. I don't have a full-size plat here to tell you, I'm sorry.
That's okay, we can ask when the applicant comes up. Thank you.
Sonia, do you, in the phasing, and I can probably ask the applicant this too, but was there a discussion with fire department on secondary access and where that's going to take place for the phasing?
Yes, Chairman, Commissioners, the fire department did include in their conditions that they would have to provide a secondary emergency access that's approvable by the fire department for anything over the, I believe it was the 30 homes.
Okay.
This is where the emergency access is. It's in second phase. If they do phase the development, then they'll have to construct that access.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for staff? Not at this time, at least. Would the applicant like to come forward? Mr. Tucker, would you like to come join us, sir?
Sonia, can I control it from here, or do you run it?
Control it.
Okay. Is this supposed to be on?
Yeah, is it not on?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Try to get that on for you. Give us just a minute.
Todd, will it start your 10 minutes now? Or do we, no, I'm just joking.
I think I'll still be well under the time, so. It's not on. I turned it on, I thought, and it said no signal, and then it went back to dark. So I don't know if there's a underlying computer and this is just a monitor, I don't know.
We were having computer challenges when we walked in.
Whatever.
Everything had to be restarted, so I think we forgot that one. So if you'll give us a moment, and we'll
Yeah.
see if we
There's
can fix
IT
it.
help in the building. Hopefully
Yes, he's still here.
On his way.
You want to control us, or do you need to be able to see it?
I think he can see it even.
I can't see anything.
No, I know, but do you want to, can you control it if you, or do you need to be able to
I
speak
don't
to it?
necessarily, I can start and probably not necessarily need to see some of it.
Oh, yeah, can he sit by you and talk to the presentation so he can see it? And use Bill's microphone?
Can? Yes,
I
he
don't,
can.
yeah.
Just so we don't hang out here all night, Todd, thanks. It brings back old memories. You'll have PTSD, man.
I'm flexible, so this works. Well, good evening, Chairman and members of the commission. My name's Todd Tucker. I represent the developer of this property, and my business address is 729 South Bridgeway Place, Eagle, Idaho 83616. We're pleased to present these applications to the commission tonight, and we just wanted to thank the staff, specifically Sonia, and all of her hard work on this. We know they're very understaffed at this time, and so we're really appreciative of the work that went into, working on this application. As Sonia noted, we are requesting annexation with the zoning of R4, and there's an associated preliminary plat with a residential subdivision of 75 single-family detached lots. Sonia did a good job of covering the annexation and the rezone request, so I'll just skip to the preliminary plat and some of the items that we wanted to discuss regarding some of the conditions of approval. This image shows how the proposed subdivision will fit in with the surrounding development. The total size of the subdivision is a little bit over 30 acres. There will be 75 residential lots. One of those is currently improved with a single-family home and some accessory buildings. And there are 13 common lots with approximately 6.5 acres of qualified open space, which is approximately 21% of the project. And the average lot size is 11,000 square feet. Here's a few examples of the types of homes that we'll be constructing within the subdivision. As you can see from this map, the Sky Mesa Highlands, I guess I should go back, the out parcel, or the lot that's located on Eagle Road, it's approximately an acre in size. Answer that question from earlier. As you can see from this map, the Sky Mesa Highlands subdivision is outlined in red. The other phases of the Sky Mesa project are outlined in blue, and those phases have already been approved and are mostly developed at this time. The two parcels highlighted in yellow are the large community amenities that have already been constructed. Since the Sky Mesa Highlands subdivision is another phase of the overall Sky Mesa project, residents within Sky Mesa Highlands will have full access to all of the amenities located within the Sky Mesa project. Those amenities consist of 2 swimming pools with clubhouses, playground equipment, open fields that can be used for playing soccer or football or playing catch, baseball. There's a basketball court, full court basketball court, and a swing set. As you can see from the pictures on the slide, in the upper left and bottom right-hand corners, those are the swimming pools that are existing. The upper right is a playground, and then the bottom left is an aerial shot of our new community center that was just constructed not too long ago, that has a pool, the ball fields, soccer, basketball courts, and then swing sets. I provided a letter this Monday with comments on the staff report. Specifically 4 items related to some of the conditions of approval. The existing access onto Eagle Road, the pedestrian pathway, the phasing plan, and the Grimmett lateral. And I'll go through each of those at this time. The first item is the requirement to remove the existing access to Eagle Road for Lot 29, Block 1. This is an existing parcel of land that is improved with a home and a few accessory buildings. The Ada County Assessor's Office records show that some of these structures were initially constructed in 1910. There are no changes proposed with the property at this time, and the owner of the property needs to keep the existing access to Eagle Road for the functionality of the property. The photos on the left show what the property looks like from the street, and the image on the right is an aerial photo. Again, as Sonia noted, we do have some conditions of approval that require extending the landscape buffer along Eagle Road in front of this parcel, as well as the sidewalk, and we're amenable to do that. We just like to leave the access open so that this property can still have access onto Eagle Road until such time as it redevelops, and then we understand that access would come from internal to the subdivision. I do have Travis Hunter here with me tonight also, and he has a few comments also to address the need or the desire to keep that access open onto Eagle Road. So I'll turn over just a few minutes to Travis.
And is that working now? I think he gave us the thumbs up that it might be. Yeah. Mr. Hunter, sorry to... You guys are both, we appreciate your patience.
Yeah, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. So yeah, this parcel that you guys see on the screen, it's located on the eastern boundary of the property. It's owned by Don and Lori Cantrell. They are the sellers of the 29 acres that we're purchasing to develop this plat. This property's been used as a residence for the last several decades, and it's historically and currently the main access is off of Eagle Road. When we actually originally submitted this application for the project, we did not include this residence in our application as we're not purchasing it nor developing it. However, in the process, staff informed us that we did need to include it in the application, I believe because it's owned by the same party who's selling us the land to develop it. So anyway, when we informed Mr. and Mrs. Cantrell that we must include this separate parcel, they became fairly concerned that this residence would lose access to Eagle Road. So much so, in fact, that we actually included it in the purchase and sale agreement as a contingency, where if it did lose access to Eagle Road, the whole thing could be unwound. So at this time, we consulted Kevin Holmes on staff. I don't believe he's still with you guys, but he told us that this should be an issue we could work through. However, it's ultimately up to planning and zoning and the city council members. As we've already stated, we've designed our plat to where this parcel will have direct access from our neighborhood. So in the event when the property is subdivided or developed in the future, it can access directly through our neighborhood, and the main access off of Eagle Road will be discontinued. So, we just wanted to respectfully ask that, because it's only one family that's living in there and they've historically used it, that we could just allow them to for that access to remain off of Eagle Road until future use. So, just a little bit of background. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item that we'd like to discuss is the pedestrian pathway located along or within Lot 14, Block 3 of the subdivision. We had originally proposed this pathway to be located within this common area because we thought we needed it as an amenity for the subdivision. However, after examination of the staff report that stated that it was not required because it doesn't connect to anything on the pathway's master plan, and therefore it does not count towards our qualified amenity. We also feel that the pathway, the pathway is located approximately 5 feet from the rear yards of those homes that directly to the north of it. Because this is a common open space lot, the rear yard fences for these lots must be open vision. And having a pathway that close to a home's rear yard with an open vision fence does not provide those residents with very much privacy, in our opinion. If you look to the photo on the left, that illustrates our point. The manhole you see is approximately 5 feet from the fence. So if there was a pathway running where that manhole is to the north, that's how close pedestrians would be to the backyards of these homes with no solid fences back there. As such, we're just proposing to remove the pathway. This would still remain as a common lot and open space. We're just proposing to remove the actual pathway. When we originally submitted the application, we had not planned on developing the subdivision in phases. However, after more consideration, we have decided that it would be best if we broke it into 2 separate phases. On the screen is our proposed phasing plan, and we understand that we'll have to provide secondary access until such time as Phase B is platted. And we feel we have a couple of different options that would fully comply with the fire department's requirements, and we're fine with doing that. We would work with the fire department and make sure that we provide them with the secondary access that they need to comply with the fire code. Our last issue is with the requirement to pipe the Grimmett lateral as it runs along the western boundary of the subdivision. We are requesting to leave this portion of the lateral open. We feel it will be a nice amenity to the homes that abut it. As was discussed earlier, you had some questions about what would that do to those lots if it was placed in a common lot. after reading the staff report, I think we're amenable to putting it in a common lot. And we designed it in such a way that even if it was put in a common lot, it wouldn't negatively affect these lots. These lots, to that easement line, it's 127 feet deep. So even that's without the additional 47 feet within the easement. So these lots are exceptionally deep. If it is put within a common lot, they would still be 127 feet deep lots. And we would have to fence it. We've discussed that with the irrigation company, and even if it is piped and landscaped, we would still have to put a fence there. And so that will be fenced with a wrought iron fence. We just think it would be a nice amenity to have kind of this babbling brook running behind their lots. Also, for you could sit out on the backyard and listen to the water and look at it. The image on the left shows what the lateral looks like at this point without any water in it. You can see it's fairly shallow, and would not. We don't believe it would provide a hazard or a safety concern. It will be fenced, and there will not be gates allowed in those rear yards to access the property. They would just be able to enjoy the view back there. So we feel it would be safe. In summary, we're in agreement with the staff report with the exception of a few conditions of approval. We understand that City Council will have the final decision on these issues, but we respectfully request that the Commission recommend these conditions of approval be either modified as shown on the screen or deleted. We thank you for your time, and I can stand for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Olson.
Yes, on the existing property or the home that's going to remain the existing structure that's already there, and the easement, or excuse me, the access to Eagle Road, is there some? What kind of an agreement do you have with the homeowner that at the time that they no longer need the property or use the property, it will come under your control?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Olson, to my knowledge, we don't have any agreement with them right now. Let me check with our ownership real quick. Do we have the agreement that we? No, we have no relation to that parcel. We have no relation to that parcel at all. So there's nothing. We don't have any agreement with the current owner of the property that at such time that they wish to redevelop it or sell it, that we have the right to purchase it.
So that access could stay there?
No, we're recommending a condition of approval that states that at such time that property redevelops, the access would have to come from the development. We're just requesting that it remain open at this time. The current owner of the property, they're the ones selling us the property that we're developing, but we're not purchasing this property. And so they would wish to have that access remain open onto Eagle Road. What we're proposing is to allow us to leave that access open at this time, but at such time that it does redevelop, whether it be us or another developer, that access would be provided internally from our subdivision. And we've submitted an exhibit to show how that would happen, extending that common driveway from the north to the south. But at the time that it's redeveloped, then the access would be closed onto Eagle Road. We're just requesting that it remain open at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Commissioner McCarville. I see your finger on the button.
Just, do you have that, do you have a picture of what that could look like with that access to where that will be? To the remaining acre?
This won't let me go. Let me see if I can.
I'm assuming it would be through that common lot, but. Is it off 30?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner McCarville, we submitted an exhibit to the planning staff, but I didn't include it in our presentation. But you're correct. if you can, let's see, does my mouse work? Yeah. So this common driveway would be extended to the south and would terminate here. And then we would provide bollards because it's too long for the fire department, so we'd have to extend it, carry it out to connect to the public roadway. So at that point, it would terminate, and then it would just be an emergency vehicle access connecting out with bollards. So the common driveway would extend from the north to the south over that property to provide vehicle access. And we're not sure if it would be subdivided into two lots or just remain as one lot, one larger lot that someone may want to redevelop. But if it is redeveloped, then the access would come internally from that existing common drive to the north.
Commissioner Casanelli.
Essentially, that could be subdivided into 3 lots, is that? So now you're looking at, is that coming off that common lot, that shared driveway?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Casanelli, yes, it could be 3 lots based on the zoning. However, it's not quite wide enough. All of the lots within this subdivision are 65 feet wide. That lot's not wide enough to put 3 65-foot wide lots in there. They would have to be a little bit narrower than that. But I believe, we can check with Sonia, but I believe the Unified Development Code does allow up to 6 lots to take access from a common driveway. And the fire department, we ran this by the fire department, and they were amenable to this as long as we continue to provide access through that common lot to the south out to the street. So like I said, we would terminate the common driveway with bollards, and then it would have emergency vehicle access that would connect down to the street so that they could get their vehicles through.
So the fire department was in agreement with you on that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Casanelli, that was correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Holland.
Mr. Chairman, one question, would you clarify for us again what your proposition is for the Grimmett lateral, that you would be okay with it being a common lot there, or would you prefer it to stay within those buildable lots?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Holland, we did request when we submitted the application that it to be that it to be an easement included in the rear yards of that. After reading the staff report, though, I think we're amenable to putting it in a common lot. That's not our main concern. Our main desire is to be able to leave it open, whether it's in the lots or in an easement. At this point is not that important to us. It's mainly the main importance is that we be allowed to keep it open.
Thank you for clarifying.
Todd, in regards to the pathway that's on the screen right now, so I'm pretty sure there's an easement that goes across there, so you can't move that thing to the south, correct? Let's move the pathway further to the south.
Mr. Chairman, there's a slope that runs to the south, so that's a fairly steep slope that's coming down, and we put it in the flat area. That's why it's where it's located where it is to have a flat area at the rear of those lots. And so moving the pathway would be difficult because it would be in the side of a slope.
Okay. Any additional
Chairman,
questions?
Excuse me if I may. I
sorry,
put
absolutely.
a copy of the applicant's concept plan they submitted on the screen for you. That shows how that property could possibly redevelop in the future with 2 building lots in the common driveway. And that was approved by the fire department.
Thanks, Sonia. I thought I'd remember seeing that. So.
It is in the staff report.
Additional questions for the applicant? Thank you,
And-
sir.
Thank you.
Additionally, if I may clarify something the applicant said, the UDC does not require open vision fencing adjacent to pathways. They could do a 4-foot closed vision fence, or they could do a 4-foot closed vision with 2-foot open vision like lattice on top. So there are other options than just the open vision fencing. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, 3 people have signed in tonight, 2 of which wish to testify, Sherry Ewing being the first.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you? Please state your name and your address for the record, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am Sharon Ewing, and I live at 2934 East Lake Hazel Road. I am in the Diamond Ridge subdivision, which is on the south side of the proposed development here. And when we were first approached with this, we were told that all of the houses would be built with the rooftop no higher than our ground level. That's what we were told by the owner. And then, so he said he was not going to sell unless that was in part of the agreement. So when Todd Tucker came to our neighborhood meeting at my house, we asked him about this, and he said that he would respond back with a letter, but that one point was not ever addressed. So we would like to see if this is part of the proposal, or if the my neighbor, the seller, decided, or it was changed, because I know he's going to be very upset if that's the case. So that's point number one. Also, I would like to know, after the sale of this land, who is going to maintain our irrigation that comes into our subdivision? This was also a point that we needed addressed when Mr. Tucker was at our house, and that also did not get spoken to. Because if there's a snake in the pipe, which happens often, and the water system goes down, we're hosed. We need somebody to fix the pump and get it on and off, and somebody to call. So we just wonder what that's going to be. The other question that I have is, from our houses, there's an elevation change, which is on the south side of the development. It's a hill. And they said that they were going to landscape it. Well, I'm wondering what this landscaping is going to look like. If it's a bunch of trees, I'm going to be really upset. And if it's low-live bushes or whatever, or how is it going to get mowed? How is the weeds going to be controlled? I have lots of questions on that landscaping. Currently, our irrigation system, as Mr. Patel sent a letter in to the commissioners, is 60 PSI, and it's going to be proposed at 52 PSI, which is not going to keep his sprinklers running, the kind of sprinklers he has. So he asked me to talk about that. The other question that I have is, how many feet is it from our back fence line to the road that is proposed right below the hill from us? I know that on the map that I got, it said that 1 inch was from here to here, but I didn't see anything that said how far 1 inch was on real land. So I don't know what that is.
And ma'am, can you finish up your comments, and we'll try to get your questions answered.
I think I'm finished.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I just realized that the second person signed in to testify is Todd Tucker, so.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this application in the audience? Going once, going twice? Mr. Tucker, would you like to come back up and answer some of those questions? And I was remiss, I should have asked you about the 60 PSI question as well. I know that's in our public testimony, so.
Mr. Chairman, no problem. I think I can answer these. So I'll just kind of go through them chronologically as she addressed them. The issue with the roof height, we do have an agreement in our purchase and sale agreement that the homes along that stretch of the street there have to be, the height of those homes the roofs have to be at least 5 feet below the ground elevation of Mr. Cantrell's property. So that will be a scenic easement that is recorded, that protects those views. So the heights of those homes have to be at least 5 feet below the floor or the ground elevation of Mr. Cantrell's lot, which is roughly the same height as the other lots adjacent to him to the east and to the west. The landscaping that will be provided in that area will be a dry land seed mix. It will be, we do, per the code, the UDC, we will have to provide some trees. We will be planting those trees at the base or at the bottom of the slope. Any trees that have to be provided for that to count as qualified open space, we will plant those at the bottom of the slope, not at the top, so it as to also keep those views open. That will be probably worked into that scenic view easement as well. As far as the PSI for Mr. Patel's property, we can accommodate that. We'll do whatever we need to do, whether it's put in a bigger pump or a booster pump, but we will do our best to accommodate that 60 PSI to provide what he currently has at his property. And then as far as the distance from the back of those homes on Lake Hazel to the street, it's roughly 60 feet to the street that's closest to them, and then it's a 50-foot wide right-of-way, so it'd be 110 feet to the homes, but the easement itself, or the slope itself, is 60 feet.
Ditch maintenance, is that the HOA that's managing that?
The HOA will manage that, correct.
Do you want to close up any other comments before we ask any additional questions we have?
I don't think so. Again, our main issues, our main requests are for modification of those conditions of approval. Mainly, the biggest one is that we can, we're requesting that this body modify that recommended condition of approval that says that we can keep access open onto Eagle Road for that existing lot until such time as that property redevelops, and then we take it, we'll change the access so that it comes from internal to the subdivision, and then that will be allowed to keep the Grimmett lateral open.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Commissioner Casanelli.
The trees that you'll plant there, I mean, will you be in agreement to provide or to put in trees that are, I guess I'm not an arborist, but sort of a low growth tree to?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Casanelli, we'll comply with whatever the code requires. I'm not 100% sure on Meridian's landscaping code. We do have to provide trees. I don't know if it specifically calls out what class of tree we have to provide. If it doesn't, then we'll provide trees that will not grow up a certain height and block their views.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Holland, did you have a question, ma'am?
I did, but I'm forgetting what I was going to ask.
Todd, while you're, so I lived in a neighborhood that had a pretty big common lot walk-through with a pathway on it. And I thought it was great. And it was a good place for, kind of a ride through the neighborhood. Because there's not an amenity-specific package, because you have overabundance of them in Sky Mesa 1 and 2, would you be amenable to keeping that pathway? Because I think having that gives it a interconnectivity. I think it would be a negative to lose it. So thoughts? Because I think there's a balance there. We're not asking you to put additional amenity packages in this application per se, but I think having that pathway is a good thing. So any thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, my initial thought is that we would probably be amenable to putting the pathway in if we could get some sort of waiver or variance for the fence that's along it. I mentioned that it needed to be a clear vision fence. It doesn't. It can be a solid fence if it's only 4 feet tall. That still doesn't do very much for privacy in the backyards of those homes. So I know that Meridian City, and we think it's wise to follow those ideals behind crime prevention through environmental design, that there be eyes on the street, that there be people to view and look into those areas. Our concern is protecting the privacy of our homeowners in there. And so I think if this board or commission would be amenable to granting a waiver or a variance to allowing us to put a 6-foot solid fence back there, I think we would feel much more comfortable with having the pathway that close to the rear yards.
Commissioner Holland, now you have your question.
I do. Mr. Chairman, I was wondering if you had a chance to talk to the irrigation district all about keeping it open versus piping it. Because we had them come in and speak to us a few months back where they expressed some concerns about keeping laterals open for safety. They didn't want to see kids, dogs, et cetera, floating in them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how those conversations went, if you've talked to them already.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Holland. We have visited with them several times and met with them on site. They are amenable to allowing it to remain open on that stretch. The east-west portion of the lateral that runs along the northern boundary of our subdivision, they are requiring that we pipe that, but this portion that we're requesting to remain open, they are okay with us leaving that open for that small stretch of land.
Thank you.
Mr. Castanelli.
Mr. Chair, Todd, there's that path that's in there right now, and what we're looking at with the landscape plan doesn't show the lot numbers, but there's 2 lots at the end of the cul-de-sac there. One of the, it did show connectivity into the cul-de-sac from that common area. As a part of that, as a part of what you're asking us to remove the pathway, does that also remove any connectivity, or is there still a stretch of common area that can be accessed from that large common strip to the cul-de-sac?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Castanelli, we're requesting that would be removed as well. If the pathway goes away, then that connection would go away. If not, then it would remain, and I think we have a condition of approval that states that we need to put that in a common lot, which makes sense. We didn't show that, but our intention would be for the access to go away. Mainly, it's the pathway, I guess. If we still provide an access to that area that people could get back there if they wanted to, I don't know that we have too much heartburn over that. But our main concern is just encouraging people to walk along this pathway directly, 5 feet from people's backyards where they can see right into the yards.
Okay, and an additional question on that. Have you looked at, you're showing that this landscape plan has the pathway 5 feet from the rear of the property. What about putting that down, moving it out? You don't have to put it right there.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Castanelli, that kind of goes back to Commissioner Fitzgerald's question about moving that pathway. That's a fairly steep slope that's coming down from the south to the north, so it would dramatically change our grading plan and what we need to do on that slope area, because that is a fairly steep slope that's coming down at that point. And so that's why we put it where we put it, is to try to minimize the amount of grading that we have to do and still get it in a flat spot. So moving it to the south would be fairly difficult and require quite a bit of modification to our grading plan.
So that common lot there is really not it's not a real usable
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Castanelli, usable as far as running around and playing in it, no. It would be more for aesthetics and for preserving of kind of natural open space within the development instead of manicured open space. We do, to count it as open space, we do have to seed it, and so we will provide, it won't just be weeds. We do have to provide something landscaping in there. But as far as usable, able to run around and play in there, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Seal, you have a question, sir?
Just on the path, I'm a fan of having the path in there for, the exact same reason you said, having that connectivity to go through. And I wondered, after looking at it, why does the path not continue on to the road on the other side? I mean, to me, it looks like you could have, especially for kids and they're, going over to each other's houses or people are walking back and forth in the community, just to have that interconnectivity in there would be great.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Seal, initially, we wanted that. We designed it that way or drew it up that way. It's just the slope. So from the street down to where the cul-de-sac ends is approximately a 17-foot drop in elevation. And so that's why we emptied it out into the cul-de-sac, is because just making that grade up to the street wasn't possible. We could put the trail there, it just wouldn't meet any standards. We could put in stairs or something, but it just wouldn't meet any standards. That's why we altered it and emptied it into that cul-de-sac instead of connecting it to the street. It's just a grade differential right there.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Any additional questions for staff or thoughts before we get a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Holland.
I move we close the public hearing for Sky Mesa Highlands, H-2019-0123.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close public hearing on H 2019-0123 Sky Mesa Highlands. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same. Motion passes. Well, team,
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Castanelli, go right
I have
ahead.
a question for Sonia, real quick. Can you confirm that taking 6 lots off a private drive is within the UDC?
Chairman, Commissioner Casanelli. The maximum number of lots accessed off a common driveway is 6. Their concept plan only shows 2, though, which would be 5.
But given zoning, in an acre, somebody could come along and potentially put 3 in there, so it would
Try.
that still would work.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCarville.
I know we've got a lot of different things on this to address as far as deleting certain things or potentially not. And I just want to make a comment on leaving that irrigation ditch open. I manage the one in our HOA, and it's got a pipe section and an open section. And that size, it's much easier to maintain on the open section. It causes a lot less problems. You can see it if you've got a problem. The minute you pipe it, then you've got to scope it every time there's a blockage. That size, I don't see posing any real hazard for safety.
And those are council waivers.
Yeah.
Both those are council
Yeah,
waivers.
I
so-
just wanted to
Yep,
put
no, I think
that
that's a
out
good
there.
call.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Holland.
I don't want to cut you off if you're still. Go ahead. I was going to say, I think I agree. I'm not too concerned about keeping the lateral open, especially if the irrigation district's okay with it. I don't see a big concern there. I do have a little heartache with the existing access to Eagle because that property may or may not redevelop, and then we end up having one of those awkward parcels that just sits there with access to Eagle Road and looks kind of unconforming. I'm not set on that one way or another, but as far as the pathway goes, I think I would like to see the pathway stay in there because there's not really a lot of other amenities that this neighborhood's offering, and they're big enough lots that it doesn't necessarily need more play structures and green spaces. But I've been to several friends' houses who have the backyard that's 4 feet with the lattice behind it. We've sat back there for barbecues. It's never been a problem. And part of the reason they chose that specific house was because they liked having the pathway behind their house. Yep. So it was easy to walk back behind, and they could watch their kids playing back and forth on the street with their bikes. We have a pathway that runs next to our house, and I haven't had it be a problem. So I don't see that being a huge issue. I understand it could be challenging for them, but I think they could put in a vinyl fence back there if they didn't want to have the wrought iron or non-vision fencing.
When I kind of I lived in Woodbridge, and the pathway was right there, and it had split rail like 2-foot fence, or basically they were tiny fences, and I love that kind of walking path. And it provides interconnectivity in places for kids to go, but also there's somebody back there can access it. It's not just an empty space, so.
One follow-up comment to that. I don't like the idea of doing a 6-foot wood fence.
Then you have a
So,
problem. I think then you have a safety
challenges.
issue, yeah.
Right.
Commissioner Castanelli. you
On
were
that
saying-
note, before moving on to other things, I guess I would, I'm in favor of keeping the path. I don't know if I like Commissioner Steele's idea of extending it to that road, but I don't think that's not a mandatory thing. It would be nice, but I think as long as it goes into that cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
But I would be fine with just a 4-foot solid fence so they could do vinyl or whatever. I wouldn't want to go, I don't know if I'd want to push it even to have the 2-foot lattice on top of that. Through my neighborhood, we've got a lot of walking paths, and there's 4-foot fences. Those homes never have a problem selling. In fact, when you're walking through there, it's kind of, people in the backyards. Everybody's friendly, and it just opens that up. I don't think it's a negative at all.
I'm cool with letting them work with staff to figure out what that fence is going to look like. But I agree. I think it's a positive, not a negative.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Seal.
I agree with what's been talked about on there. I think leaving the path in there is something that would be beneficial to all the community members. I live in a house that has common property on 2 sides, and I have a 4-foot fence with 2-foot lattice, and we actually enjoy it because it gives us more access to, it makes our backyard look bigger than it actually is, essentially. And we do have a lot of people that walk along the side or in the back of it, and we have everything from a hot tub to kids playing back there, and you get used to it. In some instances, in others, it's kind of nice to have that openness, better neighborhood feel. One of the things I wanted to address in here is that there hasn't been any report submitted by ACHD. And there's a few places in the staff report talking about how basically there's some likely compliance issues that need to be addressed by ACHD as far as the access to the north, as well as some of the grade issues that are in there for providing correct water and things like that. So I'm a little hesitant to, I don't know that we necessarily want to move forward with it, knowing that could be an issue, but I'm looking at item G in the staff report. It says the applicant has submitted a concept plan showing how access will be provided from the north, which should be vetted through ACHD. And it quotes the section that's in there for that. There's also some verbiage in there that relates to some of the water. Page.
Sonia, do you have any thought, comment, concern on that component? Do you feel like we're missing pieces?
Chairman, no, I don't. I have discussed the issue with ACHD, and they didn't seem to have any issues. If they end up having issues after their staff report comes out, it's certainly something we can work with. I wouldn't recommend continuance for that reason.
Okay.
Last thing is just leaving the lateral open rather than closed. For the testimony that we received in the past from the irrigation districts where they would really prefer that everything be, covered, I always have that in the back of my mind when we talk about stuff like this. Seeing the picture of it and seeing what it could provide for, essentially aesthetic beauty for a lot, I wouldn't mind having it back there to look at, and if there's ducks and birds and things like that especially. But what would be the requirements on that? Since it's going to be fenced and it's going to be a small area, will they be required to put trees and shrubs and things like that in there? Is it something that they're going to have to maintain and mow, or is it going to be more of just kind of a wild type of area? That was more to Sonia. Sorry.
I could provide comment, but it won't be intelligent.
Just trying to get an idea of, if I'm looking at it from my backyard and it's fenced, and it's supposed to provide something that's aesthetically pleasing. I just want to make sure it's something that's going to remain aesthetically pleasing instead of, a trap for things to blow in there and get caught.
Chairman, Commissioners, if it's in a common lot, the homeowners association is required to maintain it. If it's in an easement on a building lot, homeowners may or may not, maintain it.
And that's why if we're gonna do that and it's gonna be fenced, we're gonna leave it open. I think it needs to be in a common lot for that purpose, because that's where I think we got into it on one of the original Sky Mesas, where they were all individual lots with all individual fences, and nothing ever got taken care of. It was just a big trap for weeds and tumbleweeds. So I think with the applicant's comment that they're amenable to a common lot, I think that's where we go, or that's where I would suggest we go.
Will the common lot need landscaping, trees, things like that in it, or is it just going to be open?
If you require it to be landscaped, and if the irrigation district will allow the landscaping within their easement, then it could be.
I think it remains.
The applicant also seemed amenable to improving it as a water amenity. So that's defined in our code as the banks in all places adjacent to and located on the development can be no steeper than 1 foot vertical per every 4 feet horizontal, and it has to have a depth and velocity in all places adjacent to and located on the development such that the product of the maximum depth multiplied by the peak velocity does not exceed 4. So, they're looking at that too. But if the council allows it to remain open, it still would be a nice amenity to look at. It's just not something that the homeowners are being taxed on and not being able to use. It's kind of the difference.
Okay, thank you.
Their setbacks, just as a side note, their setbacks are affected differently, whether it's on an easement or common lot. If it's on an easement, the setbacks are measured from the property line, which a great part of that is encompassed by the easement. If it's in a common lot, then it's measured from that lot line back.
That's a great call. Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Olson?
I'm comfortable with most of what's being said. The concern I have still is about the access. It seems to me that it's pretty open-ended and without some kind of a termination on, or the concept that when it's going to be subdivided or developed, that may never happen. That may stay a house or a residence for, how long. And I don't know if there's anything we could do about that or some kind of a requirement we could put on it. If there was a life estate or something like that on it, it would work. But apparently they don't own that property, so I'm not sure what, if anything, we can do with that.
The state preempted us on life estates a couple of years ago, unfortunately, so I'm not sure you can even restrict that anymore to that point, but I appreciate what you're saying.
Okay.
I'm torn on the access, because I think we're a little ways away from ACHD or ATD ever getting out there, but I understand the concern.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCarville.
I'm not 100% that the access needs to go away, and that's a council decision anyway, but I think I would like to see at least the sidewalk go all the way through.
Up to the hill, or?
No, on Eagle.
It's in the conditions.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So we don't have to
a-
eliminate one or the other, or both, we can eliminate one.
I mean, we can make a recommendation, but that's council's.
That's council.
Yeah.
That's
That's
council's
council's.
decision on whether they give access or not, or remain that access open or not.
Mr. Chair, I agree with that, and specifically because of the outbuildings and some of the equipment that might come through there.
Yeah.
Trying to get it through that little side streets, I mean, I can't even imagine. It doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of farm equipment that's in there anymore, but if you try and get, a large truck towing a trailer through there, that's not going to be a fun trip for anybody that has to make it, so, speaking from experience. One quick thing on the emergency access that's to the north. I wasn't going to say anything, but the more that I look at it, all of the access is coming from that street that's up above on the north, and having the ability to come through that common lot as an emergency access is okay, but I don't understand why there's not something down more to the south to provide access in there, just in case there's something that's going on where they can't get access through the streets that are in there. If there was something that was going on that corner, that common lot is very close to that road. So to me, it just seems like the common lot for emergency access and the main road for access they're very close. I mean, there's only 2 houses separating them, so if, for instance, the 2 houses between them caught on fire, now what do you do? You can't get access through the main road because there's a house on fire. You can't get access through the common lot. There's just not a lot of space provided there for emergency access for the rest of the subdivision. So it's a concern. I mean, it's not a deal breaker for me. It just seems that would be better served to be down south in the subdivision instead of as far north as it is.
So the only thing I would say that I'm not concerned as much is they're not accessing Eagle Road anywhere. This is coming up through Sky Mesa main arterial or collector road. So it's way, their access, it's actually providing additional emergency access to their existing neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
So, because they're accessing it through here.
Gotcha.
And then over here. So it's actually providing access to these folks too.
Okay.
So are we anywhere close to making a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Holland.
a couple more things I don't know if we want to include, but we could certainly put it in our motion about the scenic easement that the applicant talked about, having the homes 5 feet below the ground elevation if we want to make sure that happens. I don't think that was in the staff report, but I'll look at Sonia to correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's got to be part of the DA if something
It
that's.
was in there in
Yeah.
the application, yeah.
So I think that, and then I think the PSI or the 60 PSI
Yeah, if-
irrigation component is the other one that should be in there as well.
Do we want to put both of those things in the motion?
I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it so that we're clear on what we expect.
And then does the rest of what we've talked about that's all in agreement with what staff has in the report, or we?
I think so. I think they're
looking to delete a number of things, but
Share? I just wrote down the stuff, but the piping, that lateral is something that they want to take out, and it sounds like we're in agreement with that. And maybe, I don't know if we want to make a recommendation that is made into some kind of water feature. I mean, can we make the recommendation that they move in that direction, or?
that's going to be council's final decision, but we can make a recommendation if that's what you guys so choose.
To me, that solves a lot of problems all at once, where it's made into a water feature, so it's something that's going to be more maintained, more aesthetically pleasing, something that's going to be, people aren't just going to look at it and ignore it. It's something that they're actually going to have to take time. It might be, hopefully it's no more of a financial burden on the HOA to maintain it, but at the same time, I think it's something that could look very nice.
and that was A8.
A8. A2E was the common lot for the micropath. They wanted to delete that, but that's something that we wanted to have remain.
Yep. And I think the existing driveway access, unless you guys really have a strong feeling, I think you leave that to council to decide. Let them, they make the big bucks. They get to, no, I'm just joking.
I was thinking that exact same phrasing. That's why they get the big bucks.
I want it to eventually go away, the access off Eagle Road, but
I think it eventually has to go away.
Yeah.
But I understand there's a balance there while you're trying to, there's useful utility components in that lot where he's got a lot of outbuildings that have tractors and RVs and whatever else is in there. And I kind of agree. I agree with Commissioner Steele's comments. That's going to be challenging if you start trying to take it out of a common drive, whatever the equipment they're hauling in and out of there. It's going to be fun driving through a neighborhood to do that. So,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCarville.
I just want, before we start deleting things, one of the items we're addressing is item A3A, and there's actually 2 items labeled A3A. They got the A twice in there. Yeah, so we just want to make clear that we're addressing,
Make sure we're addressing which one in this, when you're making your motion, let's just make
Yeah.
sure we outline what it is. So Sonia knows where we're headed.
yeah, because the first A refers to the existing driveway on Eagle Road, and then the second, A3A, addresses the sidewalk, so, and I think we wanted the sidewalk, but.
Yep.
We don't
Commissioner
want,
Olson, do you have any other additional? Good, okay.
that's on you.
There's two, yeah.
Additional thoughts? Or Commissioner Holland, are you ready to take a shot at this thing?
Mr. Chair, I can attempt it.
Go right ahead, ma'am.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to City Council file number H-2019-0123 as presented in staff report for the hearing date of January 2nd, 2020, with the following modifications. One, that the applicant would keep the pathway that was proposed that connects at a minimum from the cul-de-sac through to the east side, common lot number 14. And that they would work with staff on the fencing requirements for that subdivision and what the pathway division would look like. Two, that they would work with ACHD and the fire department to resolve concerns with traffic and secondary accesses and phasing before going on to council. Three, that they would modify condition A8 to remove the condition for piping Grimmett lateral, and that the applicant would work with staff in the irrigation district on landscaping possibilities or potential water features there. Four, that there would be a scenic easement requirement that homes would be 5 feet below the ground elevation of Mr. Contrell's and also neighboring lots, with the trees planted at the base of that common easement lot. And that they would accommodate the 60 PSI for the property owners to the south.
Nice work.
I second.
I have a motion and a second I'm sorry, I'm losing my mind. I have a motion and a second to recommend approval of file number H-2019-0123 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of January 2nd, 2020. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Everybody good? Keep plowing forward. Okay. Moving on to H-2019-0120, Hensley Station, and let's start with the staff report. Sonia.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the commission. The next application is a request for annexation and zoning and a preliminary plat. This site consists of 6 acres of land. It's zoned RUT in Ada County and is located at 462 North Black Cat Road. Adjacent land use and zoning is to the north is the railroad tracks and single-family rural residential zoned R1 and RUT in the county. To the south and east is the Compass Charter School zoned ME, and to the west is Black Cat Road and agricultural land zoned RUT in Ada County. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation for this property is medium-high density residential, which is 8 to 15 units per acre. Annexation of 7.17 acres of land is requested with an R15 zoning district for the development of 65 residential units at a gross density of 10.8 units per acre, consistent with the medium-high density residential future land use designation. A preliminary plat is proposed consisting of 65 building lots and 6 common lots on 6 acres of land for the development of single-family residential attached and townhome dwellings. The plat is proposed to develop in 1 or 2 phases. The applicant is unsure at this time. If it is phased, the phasing plan is shown there on the left. Access is proposed via West Aviator Street, a collector street along the southern boundary of the site. An emergency-only access is proposed via Black Cat Road and Arterial Street, and that is proposed right where my cursor's at here. Private streets are proposed for internal access. Off-street parking is proposed in accord with UDC standards. An additional 10 spaces are proposed for guest parking along the southern end of the MU. 25-foot landscaped street buffer is required along Black Cat Road, and a 20-foot wide buffer is required along Aviator as proposed. The director approved a request for alternative compliance to allow the street buffer along Aviator Street to be located in adjacent building lots rather than in a common lot as typically required, which will allow the townhomes to be placed closer to the street to enhance the streetscape consistent with new urbanism design and the design standards in the 10-mile plan. A minimum of 10% qualified open space and one site amenity is required to be provided with development. A total of .71 of an acre, or 12%, is proposed, consisting of half the street buffer along Black Cat Road, the 35-foot wide common mew, and the common area at the northeast corner of the site. Amenities are proposed to consist of a fire pit with 2 benches and a 15 by 15-foot shade structure with picnic tables. A variety of structure configurations are proposed, consisting of 3 single-family attached structures, which are 2 units in each structure for a total of 6 units. And those are on that plan there on your left. 9 fourplex structures in 2 different configurations, type 1 with rear-loaded facing a mew, consisting of 8 units, and type 2 front-loaded facing the street, consisting of 28 units. 1 rear-loaded, a 5-plex structure containing 5 units, and a 3 rear-loaded 6-plex structures containing a total of 18 units. And those are the concept elevations there. Building elevations consist of a variety of horizontal and vertical siding and stucco with stone veneer accents. Color schemes are the same on each of the buildings throughout. All structures, single-family attached and townhome dwellings proposed in this development are subject to the design elements in the 10-mile interchange specific area plan and the design standards listed in the Architectural Standards Manual, which include a requirement for porches to be provided for each unit facing West Aviator Street. Porches should be a dominant element along at least 30% of the front facade of the buildings. Revisions to the elevations should be made to comply with this. Building materials, particularly at the street level facing Aviator Street, should be high quality, such as terracotta, natural stone, clay-fired units, or other approved masonry materials for architectural design or accents. The strongest use of such should be reserved for street-level windows and entries. Written testimony has been received from Kent Brown, the applicant's representative, in agreement with the staff report. Staff is recommending approval with the requirement of a development agreement per the staff report. Staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Castanelli.
Mr. Chair. Before, I do have a question for Sonia, but before I go there, I just want to, full disclosure, I wanted to let my fellow commissioners know that I sit on the board of the neighbor to the south, Compass Public Charter School, but I don't feel that that will in any way sway any decisions I have, but I wanted to let my fellow commissioners know, and if they have an objection, and feel I should recuse myself, I'd be happy to do so.
Any concerns? We appreciate your information, and I think we're good.
Thank you. And so, question for Sonia. Sonia, in a development like this, private roads, is that, are we following all the guidelines on that?
Chairman, Commissioner Castanelli, yes, it does comply with UDC standards.
Thank you.
Additional questions for Sonia? Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brown, would you like to come forward, sir? Or I guess I'm assuming that you're speaking.
I am speaking.
Please state your name and your address for the record, please.
For the record, Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood, Meridian, Idaho. We're excited about this project. One of the reasons is instead of having a multifamily development, these are townhouses, and so they are for sale. We see that as a need in the Meridian market. We've talked with staff about that, is that you provide different housing types, but these, if you understand townhouses, the land underneath it is owned by the person, the resident or the owner. Condos is airspace that you purchase. So the purpose in this is to provide something else in the marketplace. with the prices being so high throughout, and yet provide something that's high quality. And we believe that we've achieved that. We're in a unique location, being there off of Black Cat and adjacent to the railroad tracks. We feel that this is a really good location, and it really complies with the 10-mile corridor plan, and the fact that it's providing residential housing close to employment centers. That first slide that Sonia showed, showing future land use and where the employment is and where you're promoting for that, really shows that this is kind of in the area that it's supposed to be. It changes as you go on the other side of the railroad tracks, and you have more single-family R4, R8 zoning versus what's on the south, where you have R15 and higher densities that are approved in there, as well as commercial sites. To the west of us is supposed to be employment center and industrial, which is pretty consistent throughout Meridian along the railroad tracks. And so we feel really good about having this located here and having good access to the 10-mile interchange. Just a few items. We've tried to, instead of just picking one or two buildings, I think we've listened to staff and have been doing this long enough that we've got different building types. We have a duplex, we got 3 of them. We've got front and rear loaded units that provide different types of privacy for those types of users. As you were discussing the pathway, there is difficulty selling next to a pathway. Some people just don't like having anybody, but others are okay with that. So the units that we have in the middle, their private space is shared, and there are certain people that like that. My son and daughter-in-law with my grandkids lived in a facility very similar to this in Ogden, and they liked it in the fact that the kids played right out in front. The kitchen's right there. They could look out the window and they could see them, and they knew they were there. Yet if the neighbor kids came out, it was of similar age, they could play in that area. Didn't need to be a big space, but it was something that they appreciated and they liked, and actually used even more than going to a private park that was provided within the development. The north, west, and east sides of the development have what would be considered very traditional backyard private space. The school owns the property. The charter school has the property to the east of us, and currently that's shown as, I believe, a sports field. So this is backing up to that. We have the railroad tracks along the north. Again, having that ability, we've got a shorter fence in there that you can see out into that space, and then you have the berm and buffer that's along Black Cat, and that's providing the buffering that it needs, but also the private space that's there. The residents and the streetscape, realistically, that's what the 10-mile plan calls out. As Sonia is talked about, they're looking for porches, and they want, to be able to look at that. We feel that works really well with the school. There are certain times that the school's really busy, but usually when you're home in the evening and you want to sit out on the porch in the front of the unit that's along Aviation, it's pretty quiet because everybody's gone home from the school. We're in agreement with the staff report, and I'd stand for any questions that you might have. We feel that this is a really good location for what we're proposing.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioner Holland, go right ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Brown, could you talk just a little bit about what buffering you'll have to the north between the rail line and where the homes will be?
We have the backyard that's there. There, we'll have it fenced. We proposed a 5-foot, isn't that what we ended up with? A 5-foot fence back there. Sonia? I think it's a wrought iron 5-foot fence. No, 4 and 2. So it has the lattice on the top.
I think my only concern, I think the development looks like it's well laid out. I like the pathway that goes through the middle. My only concern is whenever there's homes that are kind of backed up to rail lines, and I know you've got some right-of-way between where the homes end and where the rail line is, just the noise and sound that comes through from rails, and sometimes that can be a challenge. That's my only comment right now, but.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Seal.
I had a similar question on the common area that's there. Is that going to be completely fenced since it is right by the rail line?
Yes, it's going to be fenced, and then also there's the drain that goes through there, and that drain is going to be fenced.
Okay.
So, yes, so that you can't go onto the rail line area that's out there.
Just a quick question on the amenity that's in there. Since this is going to be probably a lot of starter families and things like that, is there any, would you consider putting any kind of playground equipment in there or something that's more well-fitted for younger kids?
I don't know that really is the demographic. When you consider what I'm being told, at least this is coming back from real estate people, that we still have 51% of people that are coming here are coming empty nesters, basically. This provides somebody with a means, as long as they're physically able to go up the stairs, to have that. I don't know. I think that we've tried to choose an amenity that fits the development. So we haven't looked at doing a playground or something like that. We figured that those kind of eat up that space, and it's kind of a natural area already existing with the existing trees, and we're trying to save that portion, if you will, that's in there. There are other trees that are around this project along the south and along the west, and those aren't really savable trees. They're trash trees, if you will, and so those are being removed. But we feel that there's already pretty much a private park space that's existing. We're not waiting for trees to grow. They're existing mature trees.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions? Thank you, sir, very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who would like to testify?
Mr. Chair, we have one person signed in, but nobody wishing to testify.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify? Sir, please come forward. We appreciate you being here. State your name and your address for the record.
My name is David Peterson, and my address is 4096 West Gillette Drive, Meridian, and it's in the Castlebrook subdivision, which is on the other side. It's fairly removed from this particular location. So I start?
Yep, absolutely. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner and the board. I'm very much against this just because of the population density that's proposed. We lived in Virginia for 10 years, and there are a lot of townhomes there. And we do believe that, or at least I do, that townhomes are pretty much populated by starter families. And what you're going to see, let's see if this mouse will work, is these streets will be the play zones of these starter families. Yes, they will play right out here in the common area, but the streets will be the place for bicycle races and all kinds of soccer activities and stuff like that, and as well as cars not fitting in the driveway or in the garages. You know, Meridian area has a lot of multi-car families, and you're going to see that this street becomes very congested. But my main concern is aviation being the main route here. Already with the school here, we see at the beginning of school when parents are dropping off their kids, and then at the end of school when they're picking them up, this place is very congested all along here. And the railroads are right about here, and the cars trying to turn in and out of here are backed up clear, almost half a mile trying to get through there, which is not only a safety hazard, but it's just difficult for the rest of us that try to get in and out of that area. I just don't see it being genuine, and I see disingenuity about trying to meet a population density that is just not really fit for this type of traffic area. The other thing is I'm seeing, and this is kind of related to it, but not definitely, but the kids at the school, they need a place to work out and do their track and so forth. And right now they've been running right along the road here. I mean, right along the road to try and get over to a more widespread common area. So it'll be good when this field is made into an activity field, but then you're going to find all these people, the kids especially from this townhouse area, getting over in that school area. They need a place to play. They do need playground equipment. The common area is nice, but they do need a playground equipment there. So I, first of all, don't think it's good for the traffic pattern. I don't think it's good for the population density, and I think that's just about it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to testify this evening? Sir, please come forward. Please state your name and your address, and the floor is yours, sir.
Jason Hibbard, 641 North Puma Avenue. Just kitty corner of this development, north of the tracks on the west side. And I share the same sentiment as the traffic concern. I'm curious if a traffic study's been performed on this site. Due to the new school, the added light, the additional traffic due to widening Franklin Road, the stop signs still at the tracks that continually backing up. Trying to access off of Pine or Elgato, the traffic is just crazy backed up, and I don't see a resolution coming for it. Much less sidewalks to the school for students. My kids do attend Compass. They are in the grade school currently, but when they do transfer to the high school, there's no safe walking path to get them to the school. So there's no sidewalks provided. He's providing sidewalks, I guess, but there's no safe travel across the tracks. And so those are a bit of my concerns. If there's like a left turn for the southbound traffic and maybe a right turn for the northbound traffic to keep that traffic flowing, could help this development. But I know it's coming around this area. That's just my concerns is the traffic is this whole valley that everybody knows about, so.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to testify on this application? Mr. Brown, would you like to come back up and close this out, sir?
So ACHD has looked at this site. They have this site as being acceptable levels for traffic. We can all, because we have a driver's license, can say that it's different, but they're acceptable with that. We are proposing on sidewalks on our portion. They do state in their report that they're looking at improving and widening Black Cat Road between 2021 and 2025. We'll be lucky to have even a first phase of people actually living there by 2021. That's going forward with approvals from you and the city council. Some of the things that I'm involved with other projects, I know that Pine is soon to make that connection through, and currently there's over 5,000 vehicle trips that ACHD is having that are kind of stuck down there, and now they'll have a safe route out to 10 Mile, and they won't have to go across the railroad tracks, and I know that that'll have a huge effect. Those kind of things still have to come before you. You haven't seen those applications, but they're in the process of coming. But like this, they're projects that aren't really going to be built until 2021 anyway, when ACHD is looking at some of those things being addressed. We're looking that, for the most part, the buyers that we're anticipating buying are going to be young families that maybe they do have one or two kids, but those one or two kids are not attending school yet. They're younger couples. There's single-family housing that is close by that if families want to move into, they're just on the other side of Franklin Road, and that housing is out in this area and available. So we view that this being a different buyer than having a whole bunch of kids in here, and that's why we proposed the amenities that we've had. Was there something else that I missed? The garages, we got space in the garages. We also have space in front of the garages for parking, and then we have guest parking. So we believe that we're overparked, if you will, on this site.
What's the length of those driveways? Just so you can keep park.
20-foot setback from the roads is what the garages are, so.
Okay.
It's not little dinky things that they can't park on.
Yeah, you have a full set driveway. Okay. Additional thoughts, or should we request questions?
The interesting thing, and you guys have just recently gone through the comp plan and the amendments and everything, and you have the potential. So this calls for medium high density on this piece of property and for this general area. And that's 15 units per acre. We're at 10. There are other product types. If we were just trying to put density on this site, there are other product types that we could have used. We think that we're meeting a need that isn't being addressed currently in Meridian, and feel that the townhouses are going to be something that is going to be basically exciting for people to be able to get in and get a house and meet a different market. Everything in here is maintained by an HOA, so it's not, even though they own it, their dues are paying for the lawn to be mowed and those kind of things. So we feel that we got a really nice project and ask for your approval.
Questions for the applicant? Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
Move we close the public hearing for Hensley Station 2019-0120.
Second.
I have a motion and multiple seconds. Thank you. On Hensley Station, to close the public hearing on Hensley Station H 2019-0120. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. And this application is before you for consideration. Do you have opening thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Seal.
As being a person that runs along Black Cat Road, I'm happy to see that there are going to be more sidewalks to run through there. I'd love to see something that extended across the railroad tracks, because it is, I mean, it's just dangerous to run across there. So, I mean, I personally wouldn't allow my kid to walk across there. So, knowing that there's going to be improvement to the road from 2021 to 2025 is promising. Hopefully we can do something, especially with Compass being in there and, you know, everything that's being built to help move that along closer to the 2021 side of things. Is that something, is there a process for that, Sonia, that the city can go through to help move that along through HCHD? Or is that something that?
I think rooftops drive that, to be totally honest.
Is it more, okay. I mean, there's a lot of them in there, and that section is extremely dangerous to walk, run, bike, you name it. It's horrible considering the amount of traffic that goes across it right now. he actually touched on the fact that there's, in the report, there's a piece in there was no credit for the existing trees for mitigation, but I'm glad to see that they're actually keeping some of those existing trees in there because it's actually a really neat little property that's in there, so seeing something that goes in there. The biggest concern I have on it is honestly the just the amenity not being something that's more driven for, or at least having something in there that's more for kids. I just think that there's going to be some smaller families in there with kids that aren't in school yet that are going to be in there. They're going to be in this subdivision all day, so having something for them to go and play on is going to be something that's going to be needed, especially since there's not a viable walkway or something even to get over to El Gato or something like that where you have more space to walk around and do things like that. So I just think that amenity needs to be something better. I don't know what better would be, but something more for kids.
Mr. Holland?
Mr. Chair, I think one nice thing about being located next to the school is that there tends to be open space with schools, and I know when they came forward to us, they were planning to put in a sports field at some point, which likely would be used in the evening hours for neighboring residents. So I think that helps a little bit to me on the open space needs there. But I would agree, I'd love to see a play structure of some sort. I don't know that I want to require it, but it'd be nice for them to consider something there. My only concern was still with the rail line and making sure that there's an adequate buffer there, because I know how fast some of those trains can come through and how loud they are, and anything we can do to have a better noise buffer, whether that's instead of just requiring a wood fence there, maybe it's, I don't know, some sort of concrete fence to give a little bit better sound barrier or something. Just a thought. I don't know that I have anything I want to require there either, but certainly something I want council to consider as they look at this application.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Seal?
One point on the railroad is the speed limit for that area right there is 35 miles an hour. They can't go any faster than that, so which is still plenty fast enough for a train, but at the same time, it's not like the ones you see going along at 60 plus miles an hour. They're pretty controlled, and they're actually pretty small. I don't think there's any limitation on the number of cars they can carry, but usually you see half a dozen maybe, if not less.
Mr. Chair, I know it's not a main line that runs there, it's just an offshoot, but
Yep.
One other comment too, I think the other challenge, I would love to see the sidewalk continue up to the north too, above the railroad tracks, but challenge is that that's Union Pacific right away, so in order to do that, you've got to work out an easement with UP, and that can take a while.
Years. Commissioner McCarville, go right ahead.
Mr. Chair. I guess I would like to see maybe something, a play structure, like you said, for the open space, but I would tend to agree that this is going to be just as much empty nesters moving into something like this as it is young families with what we have moving in here, and just the needs of the empty nesters wanting to downsize somewhat and have the HOA take care of their mowing and such.
When I like Mew products, I think it gives us a different look than and I think I appreciate the applicants trying to be responsive to our latest comprehensive plan changes, because I think that is, the 10-mile interchange is not very far away, and I understand the traffic concerns, and understandable, and I know that ACHD is behind in a lot of those cases. But I do like the product, and I know that we need something like this. We've talked about it a couple times where we've seen, like, if we could pick up a project and move it somewhere else, we'd like that. And so I do think Mew products are cool, and I think they've done a good job of trying to park it, guest parking, and provide adequate parking throughout that, because it's something we talk about a lot. I think as that whole corner redevelops, I think it will fit in there. I think if you're going to buy a townhome next to a railroad, you know what you're getting. So the market's going to kind of manage that. But I do understand the play structure thing. I think, or play structure comments, I think that's there's a balance there. So trying to find that out is important. Commissioner Casanelli.
I kind of echoing some of your comments. I do like the product. I do like the idea of townhomes. We did talk about that. I think it was 1 or 2 meetings ago where it doesn't exist here and it exists. The traffic concerns coming out of there, they're real. I've made my personal opinion about ACHD more than once, but I mean, I think that they should have. I think that in their requirements, there should at least be a temporary turn lane to widen that just enough. It's done elsewhere, I think, but I don't. That's out of our purview to require that.
No.
So, but I think it's. I think it should be done coming in and out of there to have a turn lane in the center. But it is going to be widened, supposedly, at some point.
Sooner rather than later.
I mean, I know
hopefully.
a year ago that wasn't even on their radar, but now it is, which is good to see. I'm a little concerned about the guest parking. I'd like to see more than 10 spots. I don't know that that's enough. And then I also echo my fellow commissioners. I would like to see a little bit more amenity. I think it would be hugely popular to have something else in there other than just a picnic area.
Mr. Olson, do you have thoughts, sir?
Just two. On the amenity, it seems to me that even the empty nesters have grandchildren that come over and play. And I think it would be a good idea to have the playground facilities. As far as the traffic goes, I assume there's really nothing that we can do and or say even about the traffic. So, though I sympathize with that, and I drive that 10-mile route frequently. But other than that, I like the product. I think it's a good project.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Seal,
unless somebody else has something to add, I'll take a crack at this.
go right ahead, sir.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval of the City Council file number H2019-0120 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of January 20th, 2020, with the following the following modifications, that they work with the staff to provide an entity more conducive to children.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to recommend approval of file number H2019-0120 for the hearing date of January 2nd, 2020. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Appreciate it. Now we have the fun and exciting last component of the day. Election. Yay.
Mr. Chair.
Are we there?
I was gonna say.
Commissioner McCarville, go right ahead, ma'am. I think we have to take these as the chair and the vice chair second, according to our city attorney who keeps me in line.
So are these individual?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCarville.
I nominate Ryan Fitzgerald as chairman for 2020.
Second.
Second.
Lord. I haven't screwed up the last 3 meetings. Is that what you're saying?
You're a natural.
Yay.
You're so good.
I'm happy to
You can take
keep
a
doing
vote.
it.
I have a motion and a second on.
There was a motion and a second. Okay, I have a motion and a second that I retain my position as chair of the commission for
He said
2020.
he's happy to do it.
I'm happy to do it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, fine. Now can I step down? No, I'm joking. So now we have the vice chair position. Do I have comments or thoughts or motions? They're all in order. I think Commissioner Holland's exceptional.
I would agree.
You haven't tested me yet, so I don't know about that.
I heard all how amazing you are in my interviews this week, so
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCarville.
I nominate Commissioner Holland as vice chair.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Commissioner Holland to be vice chair of the P&Z Commission. All those in
I have a
favor say.
concern. I have a concern with
Okay.
it.
Oh, there's comments.
Yeah. Who's gonna make the rockin' motions if she's never?
I'm working on it.
Oh, it's
I'm working on it.
Commissioner Seal. Commissioner Seal's on it.
Will you
Be up
take
to
notes and
Commissioner
pass them down?
Sure, I'm happy to.
we have any additional comments?
That's
thoughts, concerns? Somebody has to take better notes than we were doing it. I think Commissioner Steele is working on it.
I'm working on it.
So I have a motion and a second for Commissioner Holland to be the vice chair of the P&Z Commission for 2020. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. You can't vote no.
I didn't vote no.
Okay, I need one more motion.
Move to adjourn.
Is that a second?
To adjourn.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And congratulations to Commissioner Holland. I'm going to skip out for the next couple months and
You don't get off that easy.